The Overwatch League, they managed to settle one of their lawsuits. Good news for them. Well done. This was reported in the Wolf Report. For those that remember my reporting about this, basically, one of the things that ended up coming out through an incidental story I wrote was that they had been, the Overwatch League, they'd been, and I imagine, based on the way this is worded, the Call of Duty League too, although I didn't, I was only covering the Overwatch League. They were running this thing called a competitive tax, like a sort of competitive luxury tax or whatever the exact wording of it was. And basically what that means is it's a fucking salary cap. Now, I think it came out when Susie from London Spitfire tweeted about it. Then it got deleted. Activision Blizzard said, no, delete that. Because if you don't know, the bottom line is, if you run a league and you have a salary cap, you have to have all these other components to it. You have to have a fucking, competitive balancing tax is what they called it. But yeah, it was related to salary. And so you have to have these other things. You have to have a player association that can bargain for the players, right? That's agreed upon by American antitrust law. You can't run what they call a monsopony. That's a new word that I only learned a few years ago. It's there's a monopoly, but then there's a monsopony. And a monsopony is when, if you conspire essentially to create one workplace, which is the only place where people can ply their trade. So in other words, you own the entirety of the workplace where a particular skill set would be valued. You've created a monsopony. You could then fix it and control it to fuck over workers' rights, And we've had functional monsoponies before. We know people have agreed to super secret stealthy salary caps and and limiting factors on player contracts in the past. Monopsony, sorry, not monsopony, whatever. Fuck these stupid words. So yeah, and I guess technically the UFC's a board. I mean, it gets away with it, but it is sort of an example. Obviously, this is bad for the players and bad for the player rights. And as a result of a report I did, and then subsequent reporting that Jacob Wolf did, and I think Liz Richardson as well over at .esports, it turned out that because I had an email where it was, I think it was John Spector, it was an Activision Blizzard executive, basically said, now listen, this competitive balance tax, no. And they addressed it and it was real. And we had proof it was real out in the public domain. The government started investigating it. Keep in mind, Activision Blizzard have pissed off the government, the American government, every step of the way. So anyway, they have now settled that antitrust lawsuit. Although I do have to wonder whether that is going to stay the case. I'm not too sure what else is going on, but here's the report. The U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ, and Activision Blizzard, the publisher of Call of Duty and Overwatch, agreed to settle an antitrust lawsuit filed Monday over a quasi-salary cap rule previously enforced in two of its esports leagues. The Department of Justice filed the lawsuit in Washington, D.C. federal court on Monday and immediately submitted a consent decree signaling that the two sides had agreed to a settlement pending a judge's approval. Fines were not predetermined in that filing, but Activision Blizzard will be forced to institute antitrust practices within its company as part of the settlement, including a commitment to never impose a luxury tax in its esports leagues. Now, the sad truth about this is, guys, this comes so late into the Overwatch League's development. It's functionally meaningless because I don't see the league being operative in 2024. I can't see why they would bother. Microsoft buyouts coming. Microsoft will definitely... I'm 100% certain they'll... It can't be 100% certain. I'm 99.9% fucking certain they'll shut it down. Why would you keep the league running? It's just a loss leader. You've got all the problems in China with the video games right now, which they still haven't solved. It's not even a big esport. No one gives a fuck about these brands. You can't even run the same format season to season. And so it's over. It's dead. But here's the thing. All the players that essentially got fucked on the salary. And there's an even worse component to this that isn't being talked about. And I'll just throw this out there for the purposes of when this becomes a YouTube video. And it's something I'm always working on. I'm always spinning plates and keeping an eye on stories and stuff. do remember that the overwhelming majority, if not near the entirety of the Overwatch League, the players that had agent representation were represented by the same agency. And so, hang on, we've got one agency that's in its in the good graces of Activision Blizzard, representing almost all of the players, while Activision Blizzard is running a competitive fucking balance tax. Like, all of those players got fucked on their salaries, right? And still to this day are being fucked on that. It was not set up in a typical marketplace. It wasn't done like how a sports would work, which is, I am very good at the game. I get to make way more than anyone else because I am the best. It wasn't set up like that. It was set up as, listen, we can offer you this much, but we can't go above this much, or we're going to get fined and it wouldn't be worth our while. That's not fair. That's not fair for the very best Overwatch players. I know it's a meme of a fucking esport. I know it's a joke. I know the league's a joke. I know Activision Blizzard are a joke. The bottom line is, though, those players deserve to get paid. And I know everybody see, Activision Blizzard always give you this. Oh, look what the right hand's doing while the left hand is doing something very sinister indeed, right? You know, everyone was talking about how there was this fantastic, we have a minimum wage of like $30,000 or whatever it was. But the bottom line is that there has to be almost like uncapped earning potential for the best players in a sport. That's just how it has to be. And so salary caps in American sports operate under the understanding that it's on the organization to balance it. The player can still make the best deal for themselves, and that hasn't been the case in Overwatch. And this comes too fucking late for it to address all of the players that have probably been systemically underpaid for years at a time. I think there could still be a class action in the future. If I was a professional Overwatch player, this fine wouldn't necessarily, it doesn't make reparations for me, it doesn't make my situation better. So I don't know. Maybe there's a law firm out there that might want to take that on. Maybe there's more to come with the DOJ. We'll wait and see. But anyway, so that's the first part of it. And then you can see it says here, the settlement marks the end of one of Activision Blizzard's 4 major ongoing legal battles. The Justice Department's argued that the tax violated the Sherman Act, which is the United States' most thorough piece of antitrust legislation, by suppressing the earning potential of Overwatch and Call of Duty players. Despite the settlement, Activision Blizzard said in a statement that it stands by its argument the rule was not a violation of antitrust law. Of course they would. We have always believed and still believe that the competitive balance tax was lawful and it did not have an adverse impact on player salaries, which personally I think is nonsense. Activision Blizzard said in a statement, the tax was never levied and the league voluntarily dropped it from our rules in 2021. So they said it was never levied, but that doesn't alter the negotiation process for players and orgs who believed it was levied, and you only got rid of it in 2021. So absolute nonsense, utter gibberish. And so I think there's more to come from that story. Remember, the other part of this, there's another lawsuit looming, again, directly, not for Activision Blizzard, but for the Overwatch League itself, which is there's something going on, and I have been digging into this non-stop, and nobody's budging on it, and nobody's talking yet, but I'll get it eventually. They've retained this law firm called Sheridan's, who seem to specialize in, tech stuff among other things, and these are the team owners themselves. They've all agreed, for the first time to sort of come together, retained a law firm together, and nobody said anything about what that law firm's doing, but it relates to the league. The league is the target of any prospective action. So my suspicion is that lawsuit is about misrepresentation, being basically sold a bill of goods, because the league and the decisions they've made and the executives around the Overwatch League have ultimately made decisions that have devalued the initial assets that people bought in good faith. And not only that, loads of promises weren't kept. And you can't hide behind COVID for all of them. So for me, it's very hard to see how we can look at the Overwatch League and say any part of it succeeded. Loads of tweets have been deleted, by the way, from like old school team owners and esports executives, many of whom have like just got out of the business now, saying Activision Blizzard have brought us to a new level of like commercialization we didn't even believe possible and stuff like this. And it's like utter nonsense. It's like, the bottom line is, once all the scandals started tumbling out of the woodwork, there's no sponsors in the Overwatch League. There's no money. No one's watching it. There's no, like, pay-per-view option. There's no revenue streams attached to it. You've got the merchandise. Who's buying Overwatch shirts? Who's buying any Overwatch, like, toys? Who's buying, like, anything that's going to benefit the orgs in any way, shape, or form? Nobody's doing that. And so now, on top of that, this disastrous decision in China, where the games, we don't even know what's going to happen with the league, whether those commitments can be met. I'm telling you, that has got a lawsuit written all over it. 100%. And the only way I could see it sort of even ending is for Activision Blizzard to essentially give everyone their money back and say, bad. Like, the operational costs of an Overwatch team are ridiculous. Remember, it's Activision Blizzard that imposed the minimum wage so they can, say we're a good organization, we're a good league, we're doing all these positive things for esports. Meanwhile, they fucked up the business end of this project to the point where the league is you're just shoveling money into a pit, more so than any other esport out there right now, because there is no upside to running an Overwatch league. So trust me, the only way I can see this ending is you just give everyone their money back and say, sorry, like, just fuck this, like, what a joke. And when it happens, and when they announce next year that it's going under, I can't wait, because I want to write the book on the Overwatch league from start to finish. I got loads of stuff I never published, loads of stuff I know, and, you just sort of hold on to it. I'd love to do the definitive book, like, because it is the biggest esports failure of all time, bar none. So when it happens, like, it's great. And listen, I always said when the Overwatch League dies, it's going to be a bad day for esports. That was sort of when I cared about esports and esports surviving. Definitely don't now. I don't even think it will be a bad day for esports. I think everybody knows that it was a bad idea to begin with, and it was only going one way anyway. So, listen, it's a purge. And I still think the players definitely have restitution in their future. The whole thing was just run without any consideration for anyone but Activision Blizzard trying to desperately, finally, get loads of money back from esports, which, remember, they conceptually think they built it because they got accidentally lucky with the success of Brood War in South Korea. Riot Games also think they made esports, and they think they're entitled to a piece of everything. But Activision Blizzard were the original guys. They were the ones that were like turning around to fucking Twitch and going, you've just been bought by Amazon for like 970 million. What's our cut? They're out of their mind. So that's all this was. Listen, I don't follow the Call of Duty League as religiously. I got friends over in the Call of Duty League, a lot more than I do in the Overwatch League, even though I got friends in the Overwatch League too. I don't want the Call of Duty League to fail, but here's the difference. Call of Duty, you're getting a new Call of Duty every year, whether you want one or not. There's always going to be competitive Call of Duty. It doesn't matter whether it's big, small. There's always going to be some benefit to Call of Duty. It's a cultural phenomenon. Like, I can say Call of Duty, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You will have played a version of Call of Duty. It's probably one of the most played game properties throughout history. What's Overwatch? Who gives a fuck? I couldn't even name all of the Overwatch heroes. I probably couldn't even name you 5. It's had zero cultural impact because it wasn't made to be a good game. It was made because they thought, if we make like this super Tumblr approved version of esports, we'll tap into a huge audience and we'll get the core audience as well. And it's like, no, you made a niche within a niche within a niche, and then you wondered why it was shit and small. Like, just more moronic ideas from Activision Blizzard as a company. The bottom line is, like, Call of Duty will always be all right to some degree, even though I think the Call of Duty League in its current form will get shut down. There'll always be Call of Duty tournaments. There'll always be tournament operators going to Microsoft in the future and getting a license. Don't rule out Microsoft understand the value of esports tournaments. They just like to do. Here's a tournament. Here's a lot of money. These guys are running it. You know, think about how they do it with their Halo shit. You know, they get it. It's not the same. That they don't want to run like a big league, a big project. Halo is old school as shit. Like, and they still pump money into Halo esports. So Call of Duty esports is still gonna fucking exist. Overwatch, maybe not. Because I don't see how Microsoft can see the value. I don't see how you can even go as an Activision Blizzard executive running the Overwatch League. The merger happens in 2024, and you say, here's what we did. And they're going to go, okay, you got an antitrust lawsuit. You've got this other lawsuit with your owners. You lost money. You didn't even come up with a format that's measurable from season to season. Your viewership peak was the first ever day you launched the league. You're the reason Twitch doesn't pay money now to tournament operators because the $90 million you got for 2 seasons fucked it for everyone. Nobody even likes the game on a sort of cultural level. You made a sequel that everyone instantly forgot about because it changed nothing. And you've got 0 sponsors because as long as Bobby Kotick is like lurking in the dark like a Sith Lord, no one's going to fucking want to be associated with it. So why do we take all of this on again? Oh yeah, we don't. Fuck that. Overwatch League, 1 lawsuit down. Maybe more to come.